So for sure, our organizing team is working very, very hard, but I just want to say that we could not have done any of that without supporters like you signing up to volunteer, to knock on doors, to talk to your neighbors, family, and friends, and we've got to keep it up. We know that Mike Bloomberg is the best candidate to put forward as our nominee for president, and we've got to share that story with our fellow Oklahomans. We know the challenges that we face as a country, and we know what we need to do to rise up to meet those challenges. We know that Mike Bloomberg is the guy who's going to get the job done, and in order for us to get it done, we need every one of you to sign up to volunteer, to knock on doors and make phone calls. Our Get Out the Vote effort begins this Saturday morning. Those of you who are in Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City office is at 2915 North Classen, and we'll send out information after this event. But this is really our opportunity to hit the ground and make sure Mike Bloomberg becomes our nominee. So we need everybody signing up to volunteer. Our organizers are the ones with the clipboards. They can sign you up and plug you into the campaign. Early vote begins today, so we are really in the window when we can start driving people to the polls. So we need each and every one of you. So please find an organizer and sign up to volunteer with us. Thank you so much again for all the support that you've shown so far. I know that we're going to get this job done, especially with a crowd like this and the energy and the support that you all have shown. So just from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. Speaking of mayors who get things done, it's my honor to introduce the person who will introduce us to our candidate, my friend and mentor, Mayor Kathy Taylor from my hometown of Tulsa.
Good afternoon, Oklahoma City. Now, a lot of you may know me as the former Tulsa mayor, but what you may not know is actually I'm a native of Oklahoma City. I am a proud John Marshall Bear, a graduate of John Marshall High School. So I have to tell you, it's great to be home. And I'm excited, and I know you are as well, to welcome back this special guest. Can you imagine in this whirlwind campaign, this is his third trip to Oklahoma in just 5 weeks. It's amazing. Now, for me, Oklahoma's been a land of opportunity. I'm a proud graduate of the University of Oklahoma. Thank you very much, those Sooners in the audience. I spent my early career as an attorney, a business owner, the Oklahoma Secretary of Commerce and Tourism, and then the mayor of Tulsa. And here's what I've learned. That time in life is about leadership, and leadership is not about what you say, it's about what you do. You live your values in your deeds, not your words. And it is that, deeds, not words, that make me a strong supporter of Mike Bloomberg and proud Oklahoma co-chair of his campaign. Thank you. Now, I have to tell you a story because my experience with Mike Bloomberg goes back to my time as mayor. Because mayors have a very unique job. I mean, we worry about a variety of things like sewer systems so people's toilets flush. And then we worry about tornadoes and ice storms and hurricanes. We worry about citizen safety and the education of our kids and housing for our families. And I was elected in April of 2006. I took office 6 days later, had to deliver a $500 million budget 2 weeks later. And as I took office, our yet-to-be-constructed BOK Center, that I hope many of you have been to, risked being millions of dollars over budget, and our murder rate was escalating. I needed a colleague to talk to, somebody that had been in my position and that could give me some advice. So this Democrat Midwestern mayor from Tulsa, Oklahoma, made a cold call to Mayor Bloomberg's office. Mike had nothing to gain by calling me back, but he did. And he and his exceptional team provided me advice and counsel. I consider him a mentor, a colleague, and a friend. I've seen leaders from all around the globe, and from my experience as mayor, I can tell you leadership is about getting results. Now, debates have their place and plans are great, but plans and talking points won't get one more person health care coverage, and it won't create one more job. It's about who can deliver results for America. And there is only one person in this race that has proven he can deliver. We've heard candidates talk about education. Mike Bloomberg did it. He raised teacher pay 43% in New York City. That's what we need in Oklahoma. And he raised graduation rates by 40%, and he closed the achievement gap in half. We've heard candidates talk about criminal justice reform, and you may have had a chance to sign that petition outside, but Mike Bloomberg did it. He cut incarceration rates by 33%. Now, we've heard candidates talk about improving health outcomes as well. Mike did it. He expanded health care coverage to 200,000 New Yorkers and increased life expectancy. Now, we've also heard candidates talk about improving the economy. Mike Bloomberg did it. He led an economic expansion in New York City that created 400,000 jobs. And we've heard candidates talk about housing and opportunity. Mike Bloomberg did it. He increased affordable housing units by 175,000, and during his time in office, there was a 70% increase in minority-owned business contracts. And we've heard candidates, absolutely. We've heard candidates talk about taking on Donald Trump, and we've seen Republicans that refuse to stand up to him, but Mike Bloomberg did it. He invested in campaigns and helped flip the U.S. House of Representatives. Mike isn't a talker, he's a doer. He's a deliverer. He has already defeated Trump in the 2018 midterms, and with our help, we're going to send Donald Trump back to Mar-a-Lago for good. So whatever the issue is, Mike Bloomberg has proven he won't just talk about it, he'll deliver. I'm going to tell you, Mike is the real deal. Mike will get it done. But the fight for the White House starts right here in Oklahoma. Every vote, every call matters. So I hope you'll join me, and let's deliver the Sooner State to Mike Bloomberg. So now, the moment you've been waiting for, please join me in welcoming to the stage the 108th mayor of New York City, a doer, a deliverer, and the next president of the United States of America, my friend, Mike Bloomberg.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Please sit. Please sit. Oklahoma City, how's everybody doing? Well, thank you all for coming out and for that very warm welcome. And let me also thank Eric and the whole Oklahoma team for doing that, and particularly former Mayor Kathy Taylor and from Tulsa, and for her introduction and all her work on our campaign. Number one, she's given my speech already. And number two, she gave an introduction exactly the way I wrote it, so it was really good. Seriously, it's great to be back here in Oklahoma City. This is my third trip since launching our campaign. And I have a couple of friends who I went to school with from Oklahoma City, and the first time I was here, I asked 3 or 4 people, do you ever know them? And of course, they knew these people. Everybody here knows everybody. So this time, it's finally a chance for me to eat at Cattleman's. Somebody recommended that I try the calf fries. I asked what calf fries are, and he said he'd tell me after I tried them. Seriously, this has been a big week. I don't know how many of you saw the debate on Tuesday, but it was a little bit like Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State. Bedlam is a nice way to describe it, and I know some of you are still celebrating the Cowboys' Bedlam basketball win over the Sooners last weekend. For all the Sooner fans here, just look at the bright side. At least you're not New York Knicks fans. Let's just say the Knicks are in worse shape than I-35. Now, I've also heard that your state senators propose renaming a stretch of Route 66 after Donald Trump. It boggles the mind. Just think about it. President Trump has declared Infrastructure Week 7 times and never passed an infrastructure bill. And naming a piece of major infrastructure project after Donald Trump is like naming a public health award after the Marlboro Man. You just can't make this stuff up, folks. Although in New York, we probably would use other word other than stuff, but that's neither here nor there. I'd never come out and try it here. Seriously, if I have the honor of being your president, we will finally repair America's broken infrastructure and invest in the infrastructure we need to grow and to thrive in the years ahead. And yes, it's going to require a tax increase on the wealthy, but I'm sorry. I thought that the Trump tax cut for the wealthy was one of the more irresponsible things done. I didn't need a tax cut, thank you very much. And we did need that money for infrastructure, and we've just got to go back. This country is falling apart. Airports and roads and rail and all these things. You just got to invest in these things or you can't go on. Anyways, it also includes more infrastructure investment on tribal lands. I've spent a decent amount of time each of these trips with Native Americans, and I understand their problems. Today we announced more of our plans to support Native American communities here in Oklahoma and across the country. Let me just give you a couple of details because here you would understand what we're talking about. We'll fully fund the Indian Health Service and tackle health problems that take a really heavy toll on Native American communities like diabetes. We'll help move more Native American entrepreneurs, help them start and grow businesses and give tribes more legal authority to take care of themselves, and pass the Savannah's Act to fight sexual violence against Native American women, which is an enormous problem. There is a Native American tribe right near where I live, the Shinnecock Nation, and it is just a disaster. There's all sorts of problems, and I can't tell you that New Yorkers are doing what we should do, but I will help them as well, because we just can't have a group where there's all the domestic violence and drugs and alcoholism. We've just got to do something. When you see that, you got to say something's wrong, and then we've got to stop it. And actually give them some services rather than just talking about it. We're going to work to clean up toxic waste and other pollution on tribal lands, because we have a lot of that, and give tribal leaders, I think, a more formal voice in managing the management of those lands. And we'll respect tribal sovereignty and work hand in hand with tribal leaders on all these issues, including bringing more land into trust, which is a good idea for this. The hostility and disrespect Donald Trump has shown towards Native Americans, I think, is disgraceful, and I can just promise you it will end with my administration. The indigenous peoples of this land deserve respect for their sovereignty and their right to self-governments and for their culture, and that's what they're going to receive when I'm president, so enough. Before I talk about this campaign, first I want to say a little bit about the crisis facing our country and the world. If you watched the president's press conference last night, the fact is President Trump was briefed on the coronavirus 2 months ago, but he just buried his head in the sand. And I think his failure to prepare for a pandemic is crippling our ability to respond, and now it's at our doorstep. And you can just see what the financial markets are doing. It fell apart another 1,200 points today on the Dow. People are starting to get really worried. And what the president did is he slashed funding for the Centers of Disease Control and these other essential health agencies. He fired the entire White House team in charge of response to pandemics 2 years ago. And he waged a war on science and on the people who keep the public safe and informed. You just can't do these things. I can tell you in New York City, we practiced, we had communications drills, we had drills of what you do with seniors in homes where you can't just move them easily, and how do parents know where their kids are if something happens in the middle of the day. You can't just walk in and say, I'm going to solve the problem. You have to try these things and get practice and understand, find what doesn't work, what does work, and eventually you can get it right when it happens. But when it happens, it's pretty late in the process and you can't really do a good job. Anyways, The president's not leading very much. I'm not a big fan of his, as you know. I think his incompetence, well, I did call him a con man when I talked in Philadelphia in 2016. Probably wasn't the nicest thing to do, but I think as long as you mention his name, he seems happy. The president predicted the virus would go away in 2 months. Well, the president is not a scientist, and that's a nice way to put it. He doesn't even seem to believe in science. In times like this, we need calm, proven leadership in the White House, and unfortunately, we don't need it. We really need, all kidding aside, we need somebody who has led during a crisis and who believes in science and in preservation and who believes in preparation and who listens to experts. I've always said I spell team, T-E-A-M, and I remind people there's no I in the word team. The trouble is when Donald Trump spells it, there's only the word I in the way he spells team, and you just can't run a railroad that way. When we took out that Iranian general who had killed a lot of Americans, and nobody should feel sorry for this guy whatsoever, but Trump did it without having a State Department to talk to because he really fired everybody in it. And he couldn't go and see is there collateral damage or other Americans' lives at risk, or do we have treaties, whatever. You can't run it by yourself. You have to be able to build teams and listen to people. And if you want to be successful in your business or even your family, in your religious institution, in your hospital, your schools, you have to delegate. And you have to give people authority to go along with responsibility, or you won't get good people. And I'm lucky enough to say that I'm very proud of what we did in New York. It's not the only city in the world, and it's not necessarily all of America. But in 12 years, we made a big difference. And my argument why you should vote for me is I have done it before. Others have talked about it, but I showed you how to do it. And just because it worked for New York doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. But I did have 300,000 employees and 8.4 million people. That's not the United States with 4 million employees and 330 million people. But it shows that I know how to attack good people, give them authority to go along with responsibility, and get things done, which is our logo. I think we need someone who understands that the U.S. is responsible for keeping Americans safe from a pandemic and for helping to lead the global response to combat it. And we need a president who will make protecting the health of the American people their #1 priority. And I promise you that's the kind of president I would be. Let me tell you, before I can do that, we have to win a primary, and that's why we're all here today. Almost a third of the delegates will be decided, that will decide the Democratic nomination will be awarded on Tuesday, and that's just 4 days away. Oklahoma is a critical Super Tuesday state, and I know most of the candidates haven't spent much time here in Oklahoma. Well, we've been building a campaign all across this state, and now we have to get out the vote. And so I'm not ashamed to ask you for your vote. We've got to get everybody out. I hope you'll tell your friends and your family and neighbors how important their votes are. And if they ask what my campaign is all about, just tell them that I am running a campaign for change, a campaign for inclusion and honesty and compassion, and a campaign for human decency. And I'm running to, thank you. I'm running to restore honor to our government and to build a country that we are proud of. I'm a very big American. I'm very patriotic. My first connection to patriotism, I got to tell you, my mother, who died at age 102 in 2011, told me a story one time that she was allowed to go further away from home than she'd ever been allowed to go before. She was 9 years old, and she was allowed to go to a store to buy flags for Armistice Day. She was born in '09. Armistice Day was in 1918. And we talked at the family table about America and how lucky we were. Her parents were second generation. She was second generation or third generation. My father's parents were first generation here. And I've always been a big believer. I can't tell you America's done everything right. I can't tell you there haven't been some disasters. When I found out about Greenwood here, which I'd never known before. You know, we did some terrible things in this country, but it's still the place that if you want to live and be free and express yourself and have a future for your kids, this is the place you want to be. We've just got to make it better and make sure that the opportunities that some of us were lucky enough to have are available to everybody to the extent humanly possible. And I am committed to getting things done, as we say. I want to put the United back in the United States of America. All of that starts with beating Donald Trump and, as Kathy said, sending him back to Mar-a-Lago permanently. And I, in 2016 at the DNC convention in Philadelphia, warned that he was not the right person for a job. I think I was actually a little nastier than that. But in 2018, I worked to hold him accountable, and we flipped 21 seats, as somebody maybe said before, and that made Pelosi the speaker and allowed us to begin holding Trump accountable to the impeachment process. This year, we know Trump's strategy. His attacks are to make Democratic plans look unrealistic, unaffordable, and undoable. That's not going to work. We're not going to let him get away with that. And I have the resources and the record to defeat him in the swing states that the Democrats lost back in 2016. But to get that done, we have to nominate someone at the top of a ticket who can build a broad coalition that rallies Democrats, but also independents and moderate Republicans. And when people say, oh, no, I don't want to talk across the aisle, that's ridiculous. The only ways this country functions is if we get to work together, and I'm sure the extremists on both sides are not going to do it. But still, when you go into the Senate office building and they have a dining room, the Republicans and the Democrats don't even sit at the same table. So, I mean, how do you expect them to work together? That's what leadership is all about. You try to get them together, and I did it. I've won 3 races, and I've won them all in overwhelmingly Democratic cities, and 2 of them, the Democrats wouldn't let me on the ticket, so I ran as a Republican and still won. I'm not a typical politician. I've never worked in Washington. I don't make pie in the sky promises. I don't come home I don't talk until the cows come home, I was told to say. Okay. Not an expression we use a lot in New York. But I always like the all hat, no cattle expression. That's always made sense to me. And if you'd seen in the debates, I'm not someone who yells at slogans, and even when they're not true. That's not my bag. I want to be able to, you ask me a question, I want to give you an answer. And I watched the other night, 2 of the candidates, they remain nameless, there are only 7 of us though, they said the same thing to every single question. It was just a slogan they wanted to say. That's not a ways for us. We're not trying to pick the debater-in-chief, we're trying to pick somebody that can run this country, a commander-in-chief. So here's another great Oklahoma saying. So if you want someone who talks turkey and who has a record of accomplishment in all the big issues facing our country, if you want somebody who has the resources to beat Trump, I think I can. I give virtually all of my company's profits to charity, and there's no better investment than I can make in the future of our country than spending to defeat Donald Trump. And somebody recently criticized me for spending all this money. I said, now, wait a second. You said you don't like Donald Trump. I'm spending my money to get rid of Donald Trump. You want me to spend more or less? And the guy said, oh, spend more, spend more. If you think this campaign that I'm running is expensive, just imagine what 4 more years of Donald Trump will cost our country. It would be a catastrophe, and I'm in the race to stop it. And now, even though Donald and I are both from New York, I think we could not be more different. In fact, you might say I am the un-Trump. But I'll finish with, just think about this. He breaks promises, I keep them. He divides people, my job is to unite them. He's a climate denier. I'm an engineer. I actually believe in science. Surprise, surprise. He tweets, I follow facts, I respect data, I tell the truth. He looks out for people who inherited their wealth like him. I started with nothing but my parents teaching me hard work and ethical behavior. And I'll tell you, yesterday I gave an interview to 60 Minutes, which I guess is going to be this weekend, and we did it up in the house that I grew up in. And my sister and I still have the house. There's a housekeeper who's been with us, Sally, for 20 years. She stops by a couple of times a week, make sure everything's okay. And my mother's voice is still on the answering machine. So if you want to know what my mother sounded like, you just call. We don't have a record of my father's voice, but my mother was around when I first got elected mayor, so we have her on film. She did a commercial or two for me. Thank you very much. Helped me get elected. But let me tell you about what I do. I will raise taxes on the wealthy to get the revenue we need to start fighting income inequality and paying for infrastructure and preparing an emergency preparedness and improving health care and improving education and all the other things we need to fix this country. It's just so unrealistic to think we're not going to spend any money and we're just going to plug along. That's not fair to the people that live here. It's not fair to the people who are going to be born here. It's not fair to the people who move here. My whole career I've been a doer. I believe we need less talk. I think we need less partisanship. I think we need less division. I think we need less tweeting. Okay. Now, I'm going to say this, and in all fairness to the press that has heard this 1,000 times, I do this in every speech. How about a commitment from me when I am in the White House, no tweeting allowed? Now, in all fairness, it's easy for me to say because I can't spell. But then again, neither can Donald, so, not in difference. Anyways, I've been pretty blessed all my life. There's nothing that Trump can do to me at this point that can hurt me. But he has, all kidding aside, hurt a lot of other people. That's why I'm running, to stand up for Americans who've lost their houses and lost their insurance, who can't pay their college tuition bill. And you've heard the slogan, Mike will get it done. So give me 2 seconds to tell you what the it is, and the Mike will get it done. It means winning this November. It means sending Donald back to Mar-a-Lago permanently, which we said before. But that's just the beginning. Getting it done means finally providing health insurance to every American who lacks it and lowering the cost for everyone else. And you don't do that by kicking 155 million people off their health insurance and imposing a massive tax on working people. And that's what Sanders would do, and that just doesn't work at all. Getting it done means passing common sense gun safety laws and protecting our children. And I see a couple people here with red Moms Demand Action shirts. They're the ones that really have gotten us these background checks. Thank you very much. Getting it done means making America a global leader in the fight against climate change. And getting it done means creating good jobs with higher wages. And getting it done means addressing discrimination and inequality. And getting it done means fixing our broken immigration system and creating a path to citizenship for 11 million people living in the shadows. And getting it done also means protecting a woman's right to choose and appointing judges who will help defend that. Now, it ain't going to be easy, as they say, but unlike other candidates, I don't just talk about doing things. I have a record of reaching across the aisle and getting them done. And let me just give you a few examples. Other candidates talk about raising teachers' salaries. As Kathy said, I raised them by 43%. And surprise, surprise, the results were there. More kids graduated, and they did much better in all of the testing. We really did improve the public schools. I raised graduation rates by more than 40% back then. They talk about improving health care. In New York, we cut the number of uninsured by 40% and improved health care for mothers and for babies, and raised life expectancy by 3 whole years. So I don't mean this unkindly to Oklahoma City, but if you want to live longer, either move to New York, or if you want to stay here, just vote for me and you'll get the same effect. Others talk about fighting climate change. I'll just tell you a couple more facts. We cut New York City's carbon footprint by 13%, and as Kathy said, closed 304 coal-fired power plants and replaced them with clean energy. And then, you have greener jobs and a greener planet. We really can get both done together, and that's, I think, what we showed. And while others talk about stopping gun violence, in New York, we created this gun safety group, Every Town, which Moms Demand Action is part of it. It's got 6 million members across this country, and we're working to pass just common sense gun laws to have background checks. We shouldn't be selling guns to minors, to people with criminal records, or people that have psychiatric problems. And other than that, so let me finish by saying I know how to bring people together to solve problems. That's the way I ran my business, and that's how I ran New York City. And if you go back, I was elected just 7 weeks after the devastating attack of 9/11. I remember going down to the site, and when I took office on January 1st in 2002, 3.5 months after 9/11, the smoke was still coming out of the void, and our city really was in a big economic recession. And thanks to the people of Oklahoma and all the other states in America that came to New York's aid, but together we created nearly 500,000 new jobs since then, 175,000 units of affordable housing. We reduced street homelessness by 28%. We launched new programs to fight poverty. We rebuilt our city stronger than ever. I was talking to Bill Marriott a few weeks ago, of Marriott, the chain. There used to be 5 hotels in downtown Manhattan before 9/11. Today there are 25 hotels. And Marriott has 85 hotels in the city alone. So we really have brought back the economy and given people jobs and done the kind of things that you would want to do. And over the past 2 decades, I think I've taken on the tough fights and won. I've taken on Donald Trump and won many times on gun safety and coal and coal pollution, and flipping the House blue, and I'm ready to do it again. But I can't do it alone. I need your help, I need your support, and I need your vote. And I need you to talk to your friends and family and knock on doors and make telephone calls and tell everyone what our campaign's about and how important this primary is. We've got to do 2 things. We've got to pick a candidate who can replace Donald Trump, who can beat him, and that's not going to be all that easy because he does have a lot of fans. But it's also, we have to elect somebody who can run the government. And I would argue you need somebody who's had the experience to do it, and that's what I bring to the party. So if you want quality health insurance for everyone, not empty promises, if you want to combat inequality with fairer taxes and better jobs, and if you support my commitment to quality public education, no matter what zip code you are in, if you share my belief in opportunity for all and not just for a few, and if you are ready to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, and if you are ready to clean out the Oval Office and get things done, then welcome to Bloomberg 2020. And thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.